You ever hear what $1 billion sounds like? When it's holding its breath, it's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's this low, electric hum, like a hive of robotic bees trapped inside a refrigerator. That's the soundtrack of my life. I'm standing in aisle 4 of the main server hall, listening to the endless drone of cooling fans battling a Texas thunderstorm that's trying its best to rip the corrugated roof off this oversized warehouse. Outside, the sky is turning that bruised purple color, the kind that says a tornado might drop by just to wreck your Tuesday. Inside, it's a steady 68 degrees. Smells like ozone, floor wax, and whatever diesel fumes followed me in from the parking lot 10 minutes ago. My name's Linda. I'm 45. My lower back clicks like a Geiger counter whenever it rains. And for 15 years, I've been the reason half this county doesn't go dark. Officially, I'm the operations manager. Unofficially, I'm the internet's janitor, the network's mechanic, the woman crawling into the belly of the beast at 3 a.m. when the generators start coughing black smoke. I'm not telling this story for sympathy. I'm telling it because sometimes you don't save the village. Sometimes you burn it down. Actually, forget sometimes. I already did. Watched the whole thing burn with a cold cup of gas station coffee in my hand. But before I explain how, dismantled a dynasty with nothing more than a ballpoint pen and a stack of federal compliance forms. Do me a favor, hit subscribe and like the video. It helps this story find the other exhausted souls out there who are one bad boss away from snapping. Trust me, we need the numbers. All right, back to the grime. This place, let us call it Lone Star Data. Wasn't tea always the backbone of the local economy? 15 years ago? It was just a concrete box full of rat droppings and outdated servers that looked like they'd been salvaged from a Cold War submarine. Then the blackout happened. You remember that one? The grid collapsed like a house of cards. People sweating through the night. Hospitals barely hanging on. Everything failing at once. I was just a junior tech back then, working for Harold. And yeah, we need to talk about Harold. Picture a guy whose entire personality screams discount golf pro shop. He owned the place, signed the checks, usually late when the blackout hit. Harold was sipping margaritas in Cancun. I was here. 3 straight days sleeping on a camping cot beside the backup generators, eating them diesel with a funnel and pure stubbornness. Rewiring transfer switches with a flashlight clenched between my teeth while the server room temperature climbed high enough to slow-cook brisket. I saved the contracts. I saved the data. I kept the lights on. When power finally came back, the county noticed something funny. While everything else failed, this ugly concrete bunker never blinked. That's when the contracts started pouring in. The regional hospital network stores their patient records here. The 911 dispatch backup system, Rack 12. The refinery down the road, the one full of chemicals that could turn this town into a crater, their safety monitors run through my fiber lines. I built this place. Not with money. Harold barely managed that. I built it with sweat, stress, and a decade of missed birthdays. I know every cable under the floor. I know which cooling unit rattles in B-Wing. Number 4 needs grease every second Tuesday. I know the security guard's kids by name. I'm not just an employee. I'm the load-bearing wall. So this morning, standing there while thunder shook the blast doors, felt something strange. Calm, the calm that comes from knowing you're good at what you do. Humidity steady at 45%. Generator fuel topped off. All systems green. Captain of a ship that never moves, but moves the world at the speed of light. Near the entrance, there is a compliance wall, a long stretch of drywall covered in framed certificates, state approvals, federal licenses, insurance paperwork, the kind of stuff that makes your eyes glaze over instantly. Nobody reads it, especially not Harold. But if you look closely, one name keeps repeating under responsible operator Linda Miller. License TX49 to 210, mine, to the state of Texas. To Homeland Security's Critical Infrastructure Division. To the insurance underwriters, I am this building. Harold might own the land and the bricks, but I own the reliability. If this place ever catches fire, the fire marshal doesn't call Harold, he calls me. If the 911 system crashes and an ambulance doesn't show up in time, the subpoena doesn't go to corporate. It lands in my mailbox. I stared at my name on that compliance wall framed in cheap plastic. Today it felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was the storm. Or maybe it was the mandatory all-hands meeting. Harold's scheduled for 10 a.m. He only shows up for 2 reasons: to brag about a new truck or complain about the electric bill. Like, I personally negotiate with physics. Hey, Becky, a voice called out. Mike, one of my lead techs. Good kid. Tattoos crawling up his neck. Looks like he plays bass in a prison metal band, but he can splice fiber faster than a spider spins silk. The boss is here, he said, and he brought the prince. My stomach sank. The prince, our nickname for Brian, Harold's son, 6 years away at college for a 4-year business degree. I always assumed he majored in beer pong with a minor in avoiding reality. Last time I saw him, he was 19, drunk, trying to mine Bitcoin on a laptop plugged into a critical medical server. I had to physically unplug him before he violated HIPAA and crashed the ER database. Please tell me he's not wearing a suit, I said, taking a sip of my coffee. Cold, tasted like battery acid and regret. Worse, Mike muttered. Fleece vest, loafers, no socks. I closed my eyes. Patagonia? I asked. Logo big enough to see from space. God help us, I sighed. I started walking toward the conference room, my steel-toed boots clacking against the raised floor. Server lights blinked green in the dark, steady, rhythmic. A digital heartbeat I'd kept alive for 15 years. As I passed one rack, I tapped the side out of habit, like patting a dog. Good girl, I murmured. Keep running. I didn't know it yet. That was the last time I'd walked that aisle as the one in charge. The storm outside, nothing compared to the Category 5 stupidity waiting behind the glass conference room walls. I adjusted my tool belt. Yeah, I wear it to meetings. It unnerves the sales guys and pushed the door open. Harold sat at the head of the table, red-faced and grinning like a tomato about to split. That wide, meaty smile he uses when he thinks he's gifting wisdom to the peasants. And next to him sat Brian. Brian looked like someone typed arrogant tech bro who listens to motivational podcasts into an AI generator. Scrolling on his phone, didn't even glance up as people walked in. Smelled like overpriced cologne and unearned confidence. Becky, come in, Harold boomed, waving a hand heavy with a gold pinky ring. Grab a seat. Big news, huge news for the family. I sat down, arms crossed. The AC in that room was always freezing. That sterile corporate cold that creeps straight into your bones. Around the table, everyone looked tense. Mike staring at the floor. Sarah from billing chewing her cuticle raw. Because when rich people gather the workers, it's usually for one of 2 reasons: to fire you, or to ask you to do twice the work for the same pay. Harold leaned back and laced his fingers over his stomach. As you all know, he said, this place is my baby. But babies grow up, and so do sons. He slapped Brian's shoulder. Brian flinched, then forced a bright, empty smile. This guy just finished his MBA, Harold announced proudly. It's top of his class, and he's ready to take the reins. Fresh ideas. Modern ideas? He's taking Lone Star data into the future. A slow irritation crawled up the back of my neck. The future. I was busy keeping the present from collapsing. What kind of future? I asked, voice flat. Brian finally looked at me. His eyes were blank. "'Kay, like windows in an abandoned house." "Optimization, Linda," he said, like my name was a cheap detergent brand. "Synergy." "Cloud native pivoting." We're sitting on a gold mine of legacy infrastructure that needs to be disrupted. Disrupted. Favorite word of people who've never fixed anything themselves. We host the county 911 system. Brian, I said carefully, keeping my temper on a tight leash. We don't disrupt, I said calmly. We sustain. I tapped the table with one finger. We're the boring concrete foundation that keeps the house from collapsing. Brian let out a short laugh. Dry, condescending. That's old thinking, he said. Utility thinking. We need platform thinking. Platform thinking. Corporate buzzwords always sound impressive when they mean absolutely nothing. Harold leaned forward, sensing the tension like a dog hearing thunder. Now, he said quickly. Brian has a vision. And to help execute that vision, we're making a few structural changes. Then he looked at me. For just a split second, his grin flickered. Then it snapped back into place, sweaty and forced. Becky's been a rock, he said. A total rock. But Brian's stepping in as director of operations, effective immediately. Silence. Heavy silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the servers through the glass. And the rush of blood in my ears. Director of operations, I repeated slowly. My job. We're not firing you, Harold added fast. Palms up like he was calming a hostage situation. God, no. We need you. Your memory is valuable. You're basically the historian around here. Historian. Great. I've been promoted to museum exhibit. We're moving you into a new role, he continued. Senior compliance archivist. You'll handle documentation, paperwork, audits. Help Brian get up to speed. Organize files. Make everything audit-ready. Compliance archivist. He wasn't moving me sideways. Was putting me out to pasture. Taking the keys to the engine room and handing me a coloring book. You want me to file papers? I asked. My voice was steady, but something hot was starting to simmer in my stomach. It's a critical role, Brian chimed in. Data governance is huge right now. Plus, we need all your tribal knowledge documented. Get it out of your head and into the cloud so we can scale. It's tribal knowledge. Corporate code for everything you learned the hard way that we want to extract before replacing you. I looked at Harold, 15 years. Missed my niece's baptism because a transformer blew. Spent Christmas Eve under the floor chasing a water leak. Saved his business more times than he'd ever admit. And now I was being shelved so his kid could play executive. Something cracked inside me. Not loud, quiet. Like a bolt shearing off deep inside a machine. "'Kay?" I said. Harold blinked. "Okay, Kay," I repeated, forcing a smile that felt more like showing teeth. "If that's the direction you want, I'll handle the paperwork." "Fantastic." Harold slapped the table. "Knew you'd be a team player. Brian's in charge now. Becky'll show you the ropes." Brian glanced at his watch. "Great, I've got a lunch meeting," he said. "Maybe just email me a quick summary of what you do all day. Keep it short. Bullet points." Bullet points. 15 years of keeping a critical data center alive. Reduced to bullet points. I looked out the window at the storm tearing across the sky. Then at the compliance wall. My name, Linda Miller, responsible operator, still the only thing standing between these clowns and a federal disaster. "Sure, Brian," I said sweetly. "I'll get right on the paperwork." I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to do exactly what they asked. Every form, every document, every signature. And when I finished, they were going to wish I'd just burned the building down instead. The meeting didn't end with drama. It ended with paperwork. HR, which was basically one tired woman named Patty who organized the Christmas potluck and tracked PTO, slid a thick packet across the table, still warm from the copier, cheap paper. The title read, Senior Compliance Archivist Support Specialist, Support Specialist. That was the knife. Corporate language for, "You're no longer important." Like telling a brain surgeon they're now in charge of washing scalpels. "Really think this is a better use of your bandwidth," Brian said, standing and aggressively zipping up his fleece vest like he was gearing up for war. I need to focus on high-level strategy. You can handle the weeds. The weeds, I said before I could stop myself, are what keep the power on, Brian. He waved me off with a laugh. That's legacy thinking, Linda. Automation. We're automating everything. I saw this TED Talk about self-healing grids. Why are we paying people to watch gauges, Brian said, when an API can do it for us? Mike glanced at me. Panic. Real panic. He knew our grid wasn't some sleek modern system. It was held together with spit, duct tape, and custom patches I wrote back in 2012 that no API on Earth could interpret. Half the scripts had comments like, "Don't touch unless you want smoke." If Brian tried automating the cooling tower sequence, he wouldn't streamline anything. He'd probably overpressurize the lines and spray glycol across the parking lot like a busted fire hydrant. "Just read the packet, Becky," Harold said, already checking his phone. "Got a lunch reservation. Steakhouse. Brian's treating corporate card, of course." He winked like that was charming. "Oh, and good news," he added. "Those new growth contracts. The regional logistics hub. They loved the tour you gave their auditors. Wouldn't stop talking about how safe they felt knowing you personally oversaw everything." I froze. My hand hovered over the HR packet. "They signed?" I asked. "Signed, sealed, delivered," Harold beamed. "Biggest deal since the hospital contract. That's exactly why we need Brian leading at this new scale. But hey, your name's all over the safety addendums, so they're happy, win-win." My name again. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You sold them on my safety record, my procedures, my oversight, and now you're pulling me out of operations." Brian rolled his eyes. "You're still here, aren't you? You're the archivist. If we need something, we'll ask. Don't be dramatic. It's just a title change. Clients don't care who pushes buttons as long as the lights stay green." "Actually," I started. "Clients care very much about, let's not get stuck in semantics." Harold cut in, already standing. "We're celebrating." "Come on, Brian, Patty, get Becky set up in the new office." The new office turned out to be a converted storage closet by the loading dock. No window, just a rattling vent that smelled like diesel exhaust from the delivery trucks. My desk, a folding table, my chair, one of those old fabric ones with a stain that looked suspiciously like taco sauce. I sat there for a long minute, staring at the wall. Through it, I could still hear the data center, the low transformer hum, the faint vibration under my boots. It felt like being locked out of your own house while some stranger rearranged the furniture inside. I opened the HR packet. It was worse than I expected. Pay cut commensurate with reduced responsibilities. New duties, organize historical files, digitize paper logs, assist the director with ad hoc scheduling. Hoc scheduling. I wasn't an engineer anymore. I was his secretary. A hot tear slipped down my cheek. I wiped it away fast, smearing grease across my skin. I don't cry. I fix things. But you can't fix stupid when stupid owns 51% of the company. My phone buzzed. Mike. He's asking for the root admin passwords. Says he wants to audit privileges. Becky, he doesn't even know Linux. What do I do? I stared at the message. My first instinct, run back there. Physically block him. Lock down the console. Save the system from itself. Then I looked back at the job description. Archivist, paperwork, documentation. Duty number 4, maintain. Accurate records of operational protocols and personnel certifications. Harold said the clients trusted my name, said they relied on my oversight. A strange calm settled over me. The rage cooled, hardened, turned into something sharp. Like obsidian, I typed back. Me, give them to him. Everything he asks for. Document that he asked. Document that you provided it. 3 dots appeared instantly. Mike, are you serious? He'll brick the system. Me, not today, he won't. Just do it. And don't fix anything unless he tells you in writing. I set the phone down. Then I looked at the stack of cardboard boxes in the corner. Labeled "Old Records Do Not Shred." Harold had dumped them here years ago. Deal with this junk eventually. I walked over and ripped the tape off the first one. Dust floated through the fluorescent light. Inside were thick binders, heavy, forgotten labels like FEMA Grant 2010 State Critical Infrastructure Filing 2015. Hazardous Materials Protocols. I pulled out the FEMA binder and opened it. The first binder was from the rebuild after the hurricane. Back when this place almost washed away and the government swooped in with a disaster resilience grant. Millions of federal dollars, money to harden the facility, upgrade the grid teen, install military-grade generators that could outlive a small war. I flipped it open. Page 4. Key Personnel Clause. I read it twice. Then a third time, slower. Grant eligibility is contingent upon the continuous employment and oversight of a state-licensed master infrastructure operator. Level 4 or higher, designated as the primary point of responsibility. Any change in key personnel must be reported within 72 hours and may trigger a compliance review and funding clawback. Clawback, government language for give the money back. My finger traced the signature at the bottom. Linda Miller. Mine. I reached for the next binder. Hospital Insurance Policy. Clause 1 for B. Continuity of expertise. All critical life safety systems must remain under the direct supervision of a certified operator with a minimum of 10 years of medical data continuity experience. Signature, Linda Miller. Again, I leaned back in my taco-stained chair. The humiliation in my chest slowly faded. In its place came something colder, quieter, the steady analytical hum of a technician diagnosing a fatal system error. They hadn't just demoted me, they had accidentally violated the legal foundation of their entire business. Harold thought my name on that wall was decoration. It's like one of those hang in there kitty posters. He didn't realize it was the load-bearing beam. He wanted me to do paperwork. Fine, I do the paperwork. Every page. Every clause. Every footnote in this damp little closet. I was going to map the entire spiderweb of liability they'd wrapped around themselves. I pulled a Marlboro from my pack just to hold it, smelling the dry tobacco. "Welcome to the archives, boys," I muttered to the empty room. The ancient desktop on the desk wheezed to life, fans screaming like a dying jet engine. I cracked my knuckles. Step 1. Inventory. I needed to know exactly how much their business depended on the name Linda Miller. As I started typing, a loud thump hit the wall behind me. Then a crash. Then Brian yelling, "Who put a ladder there? Jesus, who moved this stuff?" I smiled. He'd tripped over the ladder that led to the halon gas suppression system. If he'd hit the wrong valve, it would VE dumped 50 grand worth of gas into the room and sucked the oxygen out like space. Missed it by inches. This time, I opened a new spreadsheet. Title, Exit Strategy. And I got to work. Not for them, it's for me. That night, I didn't go straight home. I drove out to the reservoir. There's a spot where the high-tension lines cross the water, giant steel towers marching across the lake like skeletons, carrying enough voltage to fry a dinosaur. I sat on the tailgate and smoked, watching the red warning lights blink at the top. Blink, blink, blink. Steady, reliable, unlike my career. My phone buzzed. Bank notification. Mortgage payment scheduled $1,450. Reality check. I couldn't just storm out and flip a table and tell Brian where he could shove that Patagonia vest. I had a mortgage on a small ranch house that still smelled like my dad's pipe tobacco. And my mom, assisted living 2 towns over. Cost more per month than Brian probably spent on hair products. Memory care, they called it. Some days she didn't remember my name. But she remembered to ask, "You still working at that loud place with the nice Harold?" If I quit, the health insurance disappeared. If the insurance disappeared, her medication bills went from expensive to catastrophic. Harold knew that. That was the ugliest part. He knew I was the breadwinner for a ghost of a family. New responsibility kept me chained there. That's why he felt safe handing my job to a kid who thought redundancy was optional. He thought I was trapped. I flicked the cigarette into an empty soda can. Not trapped, I muttered. Dormant. When I finally got home, I didn't turn on the TV, didn't make dinner. I cleared the kitchen table and spread out the compliance files. Technically, I wasn't supposed to take documents off-site. But now that I was the archivist, who exactly was going to stop me? Brian. He was probably busy trying to expense a Peloton to the company card. I spread the photocopies across my kitchen table, page after page, clause after clause. It looked like a crime board in a detective movie. String missing, but the connections were obvious. A mosaic of liability. I started with the state of Texas filings. Every year we submit a critical infrastructure resiliency plan. Heat waves, hurricanes, cyber attacks, worst-case scenarios. Found the 2023 report. Section 4.1 Operational Leadership. Designated operator Linda Miller qualifications listed underneath. Master Electrician Certified Data Center Professional CDCP FEMA Incident Command. Level 3 My name. Kept popping up like a watermark. In the margin, Harold had scribbled a note. Make sure Becky's suits are attached. Inspector loves her. Loves her. Not the building. Not the company. Me. I moved on to the client contracts. The hospital network binder was thick enough to stop a bullet. I flipped to termination for cause. Normally legal sections like this are mind-numbing. Not this one. Because we host patient data, their standards were brutal. Article 9, Breach of Confidence. Client reserves the right to immediate termination without penalty if the vendor fails to maintain qualified oversight as defined in schedule. A. I turned to schedule a qualified oversight 24/7. Availability of a named site reliability engineer with a minimum of 10 years experience in HIPAA. A compliant medical environments. I stopped, counted in my head. Mike had for years. Brian had 0. I had 15. If I walked out, the contract wouldn't just be at risk. It would be breached. Instantly. They could sue for damages. Serious ones. I poured a glass of cheap whiskey. The kind that burns like disinfectant. Took a slow sip and kept reading. It got worse or better, depending how petty you were feeling. EPA permits for the diesel generators, my name. Homeland Security clearance for refinery data. My background check. County tax incentives. Contingent on retaining certified technical leadership. Me. I leaned back in my chair, cold realization washing over me. Harold hadn't built a company. He'd built a house of cards. And my credentials were the glue. He honestly thought owning the building meant owning the credibility. But that's not how this industry works. Trust doesn't transfer with a deed. It sticks to the person who knows which red button prevents a meltdown. I checked the clock. 2 a.m. My eyes felt like sandpaper. And I had a choice. Option A, stay. Smile. Let Brian optimize everything. Sign whatever he shoved in front of me. Keep the insurance, keep the house. And slowly die inside while watching the system rot. Then, when it inevitably collapsed, they'd blame me anyway, 'cause I was still compliance. Easy scapegoat. Option B. Leave, just walk. Let the contracts break. Let the grants get clawed back. Let the hospital panic. Let the refinery pull out. Company goes nuclear. But if I did that, my name would get dragged through it too. Linda Miller, the one who abandoned the county's 911 backbone? Yeah, no thanks. I needed a third option. Option C. Make sure that when the house of cards fell, I wasn't inside it. I wanted to be standing outside, holding the fan that knocked it over. I took another sip of whiskey. Slowly, a plan started forming. Risky. Annoying. Required something I hated more than anything. Office politics. But I wasn't just a tech anymore. I was the archivist, and I was about to archive the hell out of their incompetence. I grabbed a clean notepad, wrote at the top, paper trail. Step 1, document the transition of power. Hey, make it crystal clear Brian is in charge. Step 2, let Brian be Brian. Do not interfere. Record everything. Step 3, notify stakeholders professionally and legally, not sabotage compliance. I wasn't going to touch the servers. Didn't need to. Entropy would handle that part. All I had to do was make sure everyone knew exactly who was driving when the bus went off the cliff. I finally lay down, but sleep didn't come. Just stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of my refrigerator. Thinking about the data center 10 miles away, still running on my configurations, my schedules, my logic. Tomorrow, Brian would start changing things. I almost felt sorry for him. Good luck, kid, I muttered to the ceiling fan. You're gonna need more than a Patagonia vest. The next morning, I walked into work and the break room looked different. Wrong. The old vending machine, the one that dispensed lukewarm soda and fossilized honey buns, was gone. In its place, a chrome espresso machine that looked like it belonged on the International Space Station. Next to it sat a basket of organic fruit already attracting fruit flies. It's about wellness, Brian announced. He stood in the middle of the control room holding a tiny espresso cup that looked ridiculous in his hand. The fleece vest was gone. Now he had on a slim-fit dress shirt unbuttoned just a little too far, trying very hard to look important. We've got to fuel our bodies if we want to fuel the data economy. Mike stood by the console like he wanted to commit a felony with a crimping tool. He caught my eye and subtly nodded toward the main monitoring screen. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. Temperature set points changed. For 15 years, we kept the server halls at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Safe, conservative. Yeah. Google runs hotter, but Google designs their own hardware. We run a Frankenstein mix of new blades and ancient racks that start wheezing if they sweat. The screen now read 78 degrees Fahrenheit. I walked over slowly, boots heavy on the tile. Brian, I said evenly, why are the halls set to 78? He smiled. That patronizing little half smile. Efficiency, Linda. I read a white paper. Facebook runs their data centers warmer to cut cooling costs. We're wasting thousands keeping this place like a meat locker. I'm optimizing OPEX. I inhaled through my nose. Facebook builds custom servers designed for high temps, I said. We're running legacy Dell racks from 2016 and the 911 dispatch mainframe, which is basically a toaster with a hard drive. At 78 ambient, hot aisle intake hits 90 plus in July. He waved me off. The sensors will alert us if it's critical. We need to be lean. Lean. Okay, I said calmly. Just so I can update the compliance log. You re-overriding manufacturer thermal specs to reduce electricity costs? I'm modernizing our sustainability profile, he corrected. Write that? Got it. I pulled out my notepad. 9:15 a.m. Director Brian raised hall temp to 78 degrees Fahrenheit against technical recommendation. Justification cited. Social media white paper. Manufacturer specs ignored. Documentation. Not arguing. Documentation. That afternoon, the real test came. I was in my closet office scanning the original property deed. Fun discovery. Harold had tucked the land into a separate LLC for tax reasons. Interesting, possibly useful later. Then the floor started vibrating. Low. Rhythmic, felt it in my teeth. I knew that vibration. Aerator 3. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m., the backup generators run their exercise cycle. 30 minutes keeps the engines healthy. Standard procedure. Then suddenly, silence. It's too fast, like a heartbeat stopping mid-beat. I waited for the restart. Nothing. My hand automatically reached for my radio. Muscle memory. Then I stopped. Archivist. Not ops. I slowly set the radio back down. Sat on my hands. Don't fix it. Don't fix it. Don't fix it. 2 minutes later, my door slammed open. Mike, white as paper. He shut it off. He gasped. Who? Brian walked outside and hit the emergency stop on generator 3 while it was spinning up. Why? He said it was noise pollution during his investor call. Said we don't need to run them weekly. Once a month saves diesel. My blood went cold. Mike, if you don't run those weekly, the seals dry out. Fuel separates. An emergency stopping a diesel under load without cooldown. He nodded fast. Warped heads. $40,000 repair. Minimum 3 weeks downtime. And during those 3 weeks, we'd drop to N1 redundancy. If another generator failed, hospital goes dark. 911 goes dark. Refinery goes dark. Did you log it? I asked. He froze. I came straight here. Go back, I said. My voice changed without me meaning it to. Steel, command voice. It's the one I used to run this place with. Open an incident ticket. Right, exactly this. He pulled out his tablet. Director manually executed emergency stop on generator 3 during active load tests to reduce noise levels. Potential internal engine damage. Inspection pending. Word for word, I said, 'cause I wasn't the mechanic anymore. I wasn't the firefighter. I was the historian. Historians write everything down. Routine maintenance schedule canceled by director order. Do it now? Mike just stared at me, Becky. It's going to break everything. I know, I said, sitting back down and picking up my scanning wand. That's why we need the receipts. Go. He ran out. The door slammed behind him. My hands were shaking. This wasn't funny anymore. This wasn't office-style incompetence or some tech bro cosplay management experiment. This was negligence. It's the kind that gets people hurt. The kind that makes headlines. I stared at the phone on my desk. Then I picked it up and dialed a number I knew by heart. Not Harold. Not Brian. Gary, facilities manager for the regional hospital network. We'd shared beers at conferences for 10 years. He trusted me. He answered on the second ring. Regional facilities. Hey, it's archives, I said lightly. Becky. Archives. He laughed. What the hell are you doing there? I thought you ran that place. Changes, I said, forcing cheer into my voice. Exciting changes. I swiveled my chair slowly, staring at the ceiling. Just updating our contact logs for the new director. Wanted to confirm your emergency escalation path? Same as always. Call me first, then the CIO. Perfect, I said. Okay, quick heads up. Since I'm in a nano-operational role now, the automated alerts, generator health, thermal issues, all that stuff, they route directly to Brian. I'm not reviewing them anymore. Silence. Heavy. Wait, Gary said slowly. You're not verifying alerts. Nope, strictly paperwork these days. Brian's streamlining everything. Very focused on efficiency. Cutting generator test cycles too. Another pause, his voice changed. Lost the warmth. Got sharp. He's cutting test cycles. Trying to save diesel, I said. Very green initiative. Dead silence. Hospitals don't care about green. They care about ventilators staying on. Anyway, I continued casually. Just wanted you to expect emails from Brian instead of me. Don't want anything slipping through the cracks. Yeah, he said quietly. Thanks for the call. I hung up first. Sat there, staring at the receiver. Fuse lit. Gary wasn't the type to ignore something like that. And hospital admins definitely weren't. I opened my spreadsheet. Step 3. Notify stakeholders. Check. Now we wait. By Friday, the building smelled like hot plastic and bad decisions. Cold aisle temps creeping up to 74. Fans screaming at full RPM. The whole server hall sounded like a jet engine trying to take off inside a library. Brian walked around wearing noise-canceling headphones, completely oblivious. Like the machines weren't begging for mercy around him. I was digitizing a stack of old invoices when Harold waddled in, flushed face, sweat on his forehead. Hot in here, huh? He chuckled, dabbing himself with a silk handkerchief. It's 78 degrees, Harold, I said without looking up. Physics doesn't negotiate, right? Right. Brian's tuning the controls. It'll settle. He perched on the edge of my folding table. It groaned in protest. So, we've got a tiny hiccup. I stopped scanning. I hate that word. What hiccup? Insurance renewals. And the state certification for the fire suppression system. Paperwork needs a certified master operator signature. Bureaucratic nonsense. He slid a stack of forms toward me. Every page flagged with yellow stickies. Sign here, sign here. Sign here. I read the top one. An attestation to the state fire marshal that the halon system had been inspected and confirmed fully operational. The same system Brian nearly knocked over with a ladder last week. He didn't trip over it, Harold said quickly. Interacted with it. I stared at him. We need this filed by 5 or the county pulls the occupancy permit. Brian's certification is still pending. You know how slow the board is? Brian didn't have pending. Brian had no clue. So you want me to sign? I said. You're still licensed? Still an employee just for this quarter? Help us out, old time's sake. We're family. Family, that word again. I looked back at the form. If I signed this and there was a fire and the system failed because maintenance had been cut or vendors fired, the liability would be mine. Not Brian's, not Harold's, mine, not fines, not termination. Prison negligence with casualties. My name on the report. I slowly picked up the pen and didn't move it. Not Harold. Not Brian. Me. They weren't just leaning on my past work anymore. They were trying to mortgage my future freedom to cover their present stupidity. I looked at Harold. He had a tiny piece of spinach stuck in his teeth. He smiled at me like I was dependable equipment, like a kitchen appliance. The toaster you could always count on, even if you dropped it into a bathtub. I need to review these, I said, setting the pen down. Review, he scoffed. It's boilerplate. He practically wrote half of it. His smile thinned. Come on, Becky, don't be difficult. Investors are coming Monday. We need everything clean. No red flags. I'll have it back on your desk by 4. I said, a lie. Smooth and easy. He hesitated, then patted my shoulder like I was a dog that had learned a trick. Good girl. I knew we could count on you. We're all going to be rich. Just ride the wave. Ride the wave. He walked out. The door shut. Silence. I stared down at the paperwork and something inside me went cold. Not anger, not panic. It's colder than that. Precise, like a sniper adjusting for wind. They weren't asking for help. They were trying to make me legally responsible for their mess. If something went wrong, it wouldn't be Harold or Brian in court. It would be me. I grabbed my phone. It's time to confirm one thing. What had Brian done to the fire system maintenance contract? I logged into accounting access they'd forgotten to revoke because, of course, I was the one who built the system. Search Safety First Fire Protection Status. Cancel Director Note, Vendor, too expensive. Switching to Jim's Fire and Lawn Bundled Service. I blinked. Read it again. Jim's Fire and Lawn. He replaced a certified suppression contractor with a landscaper for $1 million inert gas system. A laugh escaped me. Dry, broken, like an engine turning over with no fuel. If I signed those forms, it wouldn't just be negligence. It would be fraud. My license? My name? My liability. Not happening. I didn't sign. Instead, I marked the signature line with a bold red X and set the papers aside. Then I deleted the editable template from my access and locked my credentials. If they wanted a signature, they'd have to get it without me, and that trail wouldn't point back to my name. After that, I sent one more email. From my personal account, simple, professional, quiet. Operator status update, Lone Star facility, a formal notice that I no longer held operational authority and requested removal from the site's active compliance roster. Nothing dramatic, just facts. But anyone in compliance knows what that means. Once the fire marshal sees no licensed operator, the clock starts ticking fast. Fix it or shut it down. I hit send. That was the real move. Paper, not revenge. Documentation, not drama. Let the system handle the consequences. I stepped outside to my truck and just sat there for a minute, breathing, letting the Texas heat bake through the windshield. This wasn't sabotage, wasn't payback. I wasn't breaking anything, was simply stepping out of the blast radius, letting gravity do its job. 'Cause when you build a house of cards, you don't need to push. You just stop holding the table steady. Back in my little archive closet, I swapped the stack on my desk with blank sheets inside the envelope. If Harold glanced at it, it would look done. Bought me time. It's all I needed. Time. I opened a can of my stress snack and crunched down. The burn hit the back of my throat. Good, sharp, real. Proof I was still here, still in control. Monday was coming. Investors, inspections, Brian's shortcuts. All of it colliding at once. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't scared. I had a front row seat. The weekend crawled by like a kidney stone. Slow, miserable, sharp around the edges. I spent most of it on my porch with a six-pack of cheap beer, watching moths sacrifice themselves to the bug zapper. Zap, another one gone. Zap, career status, same. By Sunday night, my phone buzzed. Gary, we need to talk. Off the record. Waffle House. I-35 6 a.m. Waffle House. Neutral territory for blue-collar diplomacy. At 2 a.m., bad decisions are made there. At 6 a.m., wars get planned over hash browns and burnt coffee. The place smelled like bacon grease and regret. Gary was already in a back booth, looking exhausted. Across from him sat a woman I didn't recognize. Sharp, gray suit, straight posture, eyes that didn't blink much, black coffee, no sugar. The kind of person who reads contracts for fun. Becky, Gary said, nodding. This is Alina. She represents the infrastructure investment fund that owns the land near the refinery. I slid into the booth. Infrastructure fund, huh? Sounds expensive. Do you pay overtime or just offer great exposure? Alina didn't smile. We pay for competence, Ms. Miller. Direct. I like that. Gary says you kept the hospital data alive during the 2021 freeze. Hairdryer, duct tape, and prayer. I said, mostly prayer. The waitress poured my coffee. For sugars. Survival mode. We're building a Tier 4 facility, Alina said, skipping small talk. 5 miles from Lonier. Groundbreaking in 2 months. And I asked, and we don't have an operations lead who understands this grid? Someone who knows which transformers cough when it gets cold and which breakers lie. Gary dipped toast into his eggs. Lonier drops, which, judging by your call, seems likely the hospital triggers the emergency portability clause. We'll need a new host immediately. I stared at them. This wasn't recruiting. This was evacuation planning. Harold thought he owned those clients. Turns out they were already packing lifeboats. Contracts have performance clauses, Alina continued. If the qualified operator leaves, the risk profile changes. Legal connects it fast. She leaned forward. So we need to know, are you actually out? I looked down at the scratch table. Thought about Brian adjusting temperatures like he was tuning. Thought about a landscaper maintaining the fire suppression system. Thought about Harold calling me family while cutting my pay. I'm not just out, I said quietly. I'm gone. They waited. I notified the fire marshal Friday. Updated my operator status. Gary nearly inhaled his toast. You called the fire marshal. I clarified my employment role. I said innocently. I'm paperwork now. Wouldn't want to be responsible for life safety systems? That'd be unethical. Alina smiled. At warm, predatory. So Monday, she said their compliance clock starts ticking. Yep, inspector shows up. Yep. And Harold has nobody licensed on paper. Exactly. She slid a napkin across the table. Number was written on it. I stared. Read it again. Was more than 3 years of my salary at Lonier, combined. Signing bonus, she said. Full autonomy. You run operations. No sons, no golf buddies. No visionaries. Just budget and authority. Music to my ears. I want my lead tech, I said. Mike. And Sarah from billing. She knows where every skeleton is buried. Done. One more condition? Go ahead. I don't start in 2 months. She raised an eyebrow. I start Tuesday. Gary blinked. Why Tuesday? Because Monday is their investor meeting, I said, finishing my coffee. And I want to walk out of that building and drive straight to my new office while the smoke is still rising. Gary laughed. You're mean, Becky. I stood up. I'm not mean, I said. I'm optimized. Driving home, everything felt lighter. Even refinery exhaust smelled like victory. For the first time in months, I wasn't trapped. I had an exit, a clean one. All I had to do was survive Monday. Monday morning, the parking lot looked like a rental car convention. Suits everywhere. Polished shoes, fake smiles. Harold was sprinting around like his tie was on fire. Brian wore a full suit and looked like he'd run a marathon in it already. Sweaty, twitchy, overconfident. Becky, Harold grabbed my arm. Did you sign the fire forms? Yep, I said calmly. Technically true. The envelope was on his desk. He hadn't opened it. Great, he muttered. Stick near the conference room. Brian gets stuck on anything technical, just smooth it over, you know? Help him out. Smooth it over. Like always. Like nothing changed. I smiled. Sure, I said, but this time I wasn't there to save them. I nodded, slow, deliberate, like a well-timed release. What? Harold muttered. Like a well-oiled machine, I said. He blinked. Didn't argue. Right? Good. Go get set up. I stepped into the conference room. It was packed. On one side, the investors, a gaggle of venture capital types from Austin, all pressed suits and slick hair. Probably never touched a wrench in their lives. On the other, Harold and Brian, puffed up and eager. I found a seat at the back in the support row. Brian stood, loading his PowerPoint. First slide, Lonier data, disrupting legacy systems. Gentlemen, he began, voice cracking slightly. Welcome to the future. Slide 2. A colorful bar graph projecting cost savings. By optimizing cooling to industry-leading standards, he boasted, we've cut energy spend by 15% in a single week. One investor raised a hand. Quick question. Operational logs show an inlet temperature of 79 degrees Fahrenheit this morning. Dell's warranty voids at 80. Isn't that cutting it close? Brian froze. He looked at me. I smiled. Not a word. She grabbed a water bottle and popped the cap loudly. Crackle, crackle, U-H. Sensor error, Brian stammered. Legacy sensors. We're replacing them and the generator maintenance. Another investor leaned forward. Fuel costs dropped. Fewer tests? We're running smarter tests, Brian said, sweat dotting his hairline. The door swung open. Everyone turned. Not catering. Not a delivery. A man in a blue windbreaker badge glinting stepped inside. State Fire Marshal? Behind him, Gary. Behind Gary, a process server clutching a stack of legal notices. Harold Jenkins, the marshal, barked. Harold stood, pale. Yes, we're in a meeting. I'm shutting you down. The marshal cut him off. Your responsible operator has withdrawn. You're running a critical infrastructure site without a licensed supervisor. 0 minutes to comply. The room went silent. Just the projector fan humming. Harold glanced at the marshal. Then at Brian. Then slowly, like he was realizing the floor might drop beneath him, he looked at me. "Becky," he whispered. I stood, smoothing my slacks. "Actually," I said, voice loud and clear, "it's Miss Miller. And I believe my exit interview is long overdue." The silence pressed so hard it could have been bagged and sold as weighted blankets. The marshal, a guy with a jaw like granite, crossed his arms. Investors were scrolling their phones, probably texting their lawyers. Harold, ever the showman, tried to recover. "Rick, buddy, there's a misunderstanding," he said, voice tight. "Clerical error, Becky, Miss Miller. She's still our senior operator, right? Still supervising the floor?" This was it. The moment. I looked at Brian. He was slumped in the chair, a self-proclaimed disruptor, deflated. I scanned the investors. "Actually, Harold," I said, stepping forward, "I'm not." "What?" His smile flickered like a dying fluorescent tube. "I'm the compliance archivist," I enunciated. "My duties, as listed in my job description, which Brian drafted and you approved, are administrative only. I have no operational authority. I cannot authorize maintenance. I cannot oversee life safety systems. I am not and cannot be the licensed operator on record." Harold's teeth clenched. "But you're here," he hissed. "Say you're doing it. We can fix the paperwork later." "That would be fraud," I said, voice sugar-sweet. "And I don't look good in orange." The marshal stepped closer. "Mr. Jenkins, if Miss Miller isn't responsible for life safety systems, who is? Another level for operator on site." Harold looked at Brian. You took the course, right?" Brian turned green, the color of spoiled guacamole. "I watched the videos, but I didn't take the exam yet. The website was down. The website was down." The marshal repeated flatly, "You are running a Tier 3 data center hosting 911 dispatch. Your qualification is that the website was down." Gary cleared his throat from the doorway. "This constitutes a material breach of the hospital service agreement," he said, calm but cold. Paragraph 4, Section C, immediate termination for cause. Gary didn't argue. He simply dropped a thick folder onto the table. Hard. "We're pulling the data," he said calmly. "Migration starts now. New facility down the road. Effective immediately." Brian's voice cracked. You can't do that. We have a contract." "You had a contract," Gary corrected. "Now you have exposure." Harold looked like he might pass out. His breathing turned short and frantic. Then he rounded on me, the fake family smile. "Gone, you did this," he hissed. "You planned it. After everything I did for you. It's ungrateful I gave you a job." "You gave me a paycheck," I said quietly. My voice dropped into that low, dangerous tone I only use around live electricity. "I gave you a legacy. I built this place while you were shaving strokes off your golf game. I fixed every mess. I protected your clients. I saved your son more times than he even knows. And when I wasn't convenient anymore, you tried to shelve me like old paperwork." I reached into my bag and pulled out the HR packet they'd handed me. "You wanted paperwork." I slid it across the polished table. It smacked Brian's elbow. "I did the paperwork." I tapped the stack, every denied maintenance request. Every temperature spike. Every generator shutdown, time-stamped, logged, archived. A complete history of your collapse organized by date. The investors were already standing, collecting laptops and briefcases. One of them didn't even look at Harold when he spoke. "Expect legal contact. We don't fund negligence." They walked out just like that. Money leaving the room sounds very quiet. The fire marshal checked his watch. "You have 1 hour to safely power down non-essential systems. After that, we cut the main. No licensed operator, no power." "That's the law. 1 hour," Brian stammered. "We can't migrate everything in an hour." "No," I said evenly. "You can't." I looked at Mike by the door. He was trying very hard not to smile. "Mike," I said, Want a new job? Where? With me and Alina. 20% raise. Real leadership. No circus. He didn't hesitate. He ripped off his Lone Star badge and dropped it on the floor. I'm in. I turned to Sarah from billing. Take me to, she whispered. Done. Harold had sunk into his chair, staring at the table like it had betrayed him. The empire wasn't collapsing with explosions. It's just paperwork and consequences. I'm finished here, I said. The words tasted like champagne. Brian suddenly stood. You can't steal our staff. That's poaching. I didn't even face him. It's called the free market, Brian. Thought you liked disruption. I walked out through the glass doors into the server hallway. The heat hit like an oven blast. Fans screaming. Warning lights blinking. Mechanical panic attack. For 15 years, that noise had been my responsibility. Now, it wasn't. The walk to my truck was maybe 50 yards, but it felt like crossing a desert. Behind me, chaos bloomed. Brian arguing with the fire marshal, which has never worked in human history. Harold shouting into his phone at some poor lawyer about to charge him $500 an hour to say, "You're cooked." I stopped at my locker. Old metal door. Faded sticker from 2008. Inside, spare boots, painkillers, and a framed photo of my dad in his old military jacket. 15 years of loyalty fit into one cardboard box that used to hold printer paper. Mike waited near the exit with his own box. See Brian's face? He said, lighting a cigarette with shaky hands. Like he tried dividing by zero. He did, I said. He divided competence by ego. Then the heavy server doors hissed open. Harold came jogging out. Not a boss anymore, just a scared old man. Becky, please, he said, grabbing my door. You can't leave us like this. The hospital people could die. There it was, the guilt card. I met his eyes, calm. They're already migrating, I said. Gary mirrored their data days ago. I set up the transfer script myself Sunday night. He blinked. You helped them leave? Protected the client, I said. That's what a responsible operator does. Even if it meant cutting you out. I'll double your salary, Harold begged. Triple it. Just come back. We'll fix everything. I'll fire Brian right now. I looked at the building, beige siding, satellite dishes. Years of my life poured into those walls. It used to feel like my baby. Now it felt sick. It's too late, Harold, I said quietly. You broke the trust. If you don't patch that, I shut the door. He stood there with his hand on the glass like a ghost. The Ford engine rumbled to life, a sound I trusted more than anyone inside that building. Where to, boss? Mike asked. Waffle House. Alina's buying lunch. As we pulled out, the lobby lights flickered in the mirror, then died. The fire marshal had pulled the main breaker. Lone Star data was officially dead, and weirdly, I didn't feel sad. I set my tiny lucky figurine on the dashboard and let out a laugh. That's how I ended up running a rival data center before I'd even officially quit the old one. My phone buzzed, alerts about power failures in the industrial park. Not my problem anymore. But there was one loose end. My mom. Her care facility discount had been tied to Harold's company. If I left, the price doubled. At Waffle House, Alina was already on her laptop. Hospital migrations 90% complete, she said. 0 packet loss. You're good. I've got one condition, I said. My mom's facility, we own it, she said casually. Healthcare infrastructure investment. I'll mark her as executive family. She won't pay a cent. Just like that, the last knot in my chest unraveled. I didn't even hide the tears. 3 months later, Lone Star was gone, liquidated, stripped for parts, basically a seasonal retail space. Harold vanished to Florida, chasing some crypto dream. Brian tried becoming an influencer. Last I checked, about a dozen views per video. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the control room of our new facility. Clean floors, humming servers, perfect airflow, stable, quiet, competent. Mike ran the floor. We absorbed most of the old clients. Smooth transition. Turns out knowing the passwords helps. One day an intern asked me my secret to success. I took a slow drag and said, never let them turn you into paperwork. And always know where the kill switch is. All the screens in front of me were green. It's all systems steady. I own the lights now. And nobody, not ever, turns them off without asking me first.